Hi, Daniel here. Welcome to the Lead and Thrive podcast. According to the Harvard Business Review, culture is the tacit social order of an organization. It shapes attitudes and behaviors in wide-ranging and durable ways. Cultural norms define what is encouraged, discouraged, accepted, or rejected within a group. If it's such a vital part of an organization running well, why is it so seldom invested in most companies? My guest today is not only invested in his company's culture, but he also helped drive a significant cultural change. This is Volker Zöller, President of Consumer at Essity. Thanks, Volker, for joining the show and being here with us today.
Pleasure, thank you.
I was saying that we're going to talk about cultural change. Maybe you can introduce yourself and tell us a bit in what capacity you drive cultural change every day now, Volker.
Yeah, my name is Volker Zöller. I'm the business unit president for consumer goods of Essity. Essity is a 12 billion euro company, and roughly 4 billion of that is in my responsibility. And I think our roots are back to the Swedish SCA company, and that we have really transformed this company to a very modern company. And then, of course, we have also other transformation processes like our digital transformation, etc. So change is on our daily agenda, as you said.
Yeah, we were chatting a bit before going live, Volker, and we were remembering that 3.5 years ago, I started seeing on LinkedIn people changing their company name from SCA Hygiene, I think that was the formal name, into Essity. What was going on then? What happened?
I mean, SCA had the roots in the Swedish forest industry, and the name stands for Svenska Cellulosa Aktiebolaget. But we have developed over years, and mid-2017, when the company split happened, we had only 15% of our business left in the forest industry. So we were a leading global hygiene and health company with businesses in more than 150 countries and producing essentials and necessary products for everyday's life. So the name was no longer appropriate. And we have changed the name to Essity, which is a combination of two words, essentials and necessities.
Mm-hmm. What was the decision process for that, actually? Like you've more or less said the reason that was to actually highlight the new nature of the business or the majority nature of the business. How did the discussion happen of the name change?
Yeah, I think when you're Svenska Cellulosa Aktiebolaget, as I said, was not really what we were standing for when you're a global player with businesses in 150 countries. And cellulosa, which is basically, you could say, the fiber which we are using in some of our products, but it didn't fit to the portfolio anymore. So I think it was clear that we wanted to change that, but we also wanted to use this change as an opportunity to really drive a cultural change within the company.
Yeah, tell me about that. Like, what was the highlight of the culture change you wanted to drive? Because obviously the company was already a majority of consumer goods. So one could think that had already changed. What did you actually want to change more explicitly and with the change of name?
We had always a strong culture in this company, and we consider this as a strong asset. But our culture was built on so-called core values, respect, excellence, and responsibility. And in the executive management team, we found this a bit, call it normative, and we wanted to change to beliefs and behavior, which are a little bit more descriptive and more appealing for our employees. And it was clear for us it should not be a revolution, it should be an evolution. This is why we have embarked on using the name change on this journey.
Mm-hmm. How did you actually decide what type? You said behaviors and?
Beliefs and behaviors.
Beliefs and behaviors. How did you choose which beliefs and behaviors would be the core of your company?
I mean, first of all, you have to say our business environment is changing super fast. And so the question was not so much what we want to have. I think the question was more, what do we need to be also successful tomorrow? And this process is not easy because our company is operating very successfully and share price development is good. So the question of many of our employees was, why do we need to change something? And the need for change to the organizations is much more clear when your business is not in a good shape or when your business gets disrupted. So this was definitely a challenge for us. Today, we are working with the so-called 4 C's: commitment, courage, care, and collaboration. And I think traditionally our company had already a strong focus on care and collaboration. These elements we were focusing on in this transformation process was commitment. We translated this with commitment to deliver superior results, so very much a performance-based culture. And the second one was courage to take the lead, which I would translate now in a more risk-taking attitude.
Mm-hmm. Was this the part that you had to out of these parts, which were the parts that you had to put more focus of transformation on?
I think the courage to take the lead is definitely one. I think we're operating in a matrix structure. And I think people working in corporate companies know the challenges of matrix structures. And I think also the commitment to deliver results is were clearly the two focus areas. And as I said, it was not a revolution, it was an evolution. So building on the great collaboration and care aspects in our company. So there were two elements, you could say, of consistency and two elements of a stronger focus where we wanted to see the involvement.
Mm-hmm. And Volker, did you find it challenging to decide? Obviously, when you have a culture change, some people are going to adapt. You're also going to need new people, and some people are not going to be able to accompany you in this journey. Was it difficult to decide that part?
I think the interesting thing is, you could say, was it a top-down process or was it more a bottom-up process? And we have said we are going for both. So we have done a top-down and a bottom-up process. We have invited more than 300 of our employees from all organizational levels, all functions, and very different cultural backgrounds to 10 workshops. And we have asked them the question, what do we need to change to be successful tomorrow? It's a little bit a unique process. So this was not the executive management team top-down. We have really invited them into the process. But we have also done the same workshop with the executive management team. And you could say, surprise, surprise, the results were very much the same. So we have made an as-is analysis and a to-be analysis. And I think it was very, very leading to the same results. I think during the implementation we have more than 45,000 employees, we have done workshops in every team. So every employee was in a team and the team discussed what does this mean for us? What is really the expectation from this changed culture here? And I think this was one of the recipes for success, the involvement of the organization in the entire process. And then it's all about communication, transparent communication.
Yeah. The communication of this cultural change. Did you start communicating that things were changing and then started this ongoing process? Or was more like you started getting feedback from all levels and then kind of announced the change?
No, we have basically launched a process and invited people to participate in the process. And I think when I talk about communication, this is not one-way communication. This is really a dialogue with the employees. So we had town hall meetings, we had webinars, etc. So the involvement of our employees was extremely high, and by that also the commitment. And then, of course, at the end of the journey, we have shared the results and went to the workshops, as I said earlier. But as I said, I think it was really a very transparent process, and everybody knew that something is ongoing there.
Mm-hmm. How did you personally get involved? What kind of things did you do? Because obviously, you're heading up the biggest division of the company. So how did you act from your position? What did you do?
At the beginning, of course, I had a role in the executive management team where we were more designing the process and deciding about involvement of the people and how we want to do certain things. But then, of course, during the implementation, you can also see a lot of people had questions and so on. So I was one of the spokesperson answering the questions and addressing the need of change. So I think this was really the role I was playing there. But as I said, I think the interesting thing was the involvement of 300 people in these workshops here. And then, of course, it's a credible process, then you see we have been involved in the involvement of this company culture. I think this was the benefit and also in the implementation.
Mm-hmm. And now, so it's been 3.5 years. Are you still doing the transformation, or do you think you've more or less consolidated a Essity culture?
I think we have consolidated Essity culture. If you would ask an Essity employee about the culture, you would really get most probably a very consistent feedback. But we also have to be very clear. 3.5 years sounds a lot, but in a cultural transformation process, this is nothing. And just by order of the top management or by a couple of nice PowerPoint slides, you are not really adjusting. So this is really about living the culture. And I think what we have done I spoke about the involvement of the organization, which is really super important in this cultural change management process. But then I spoke also about communication, which is very important, and offering people a chance to raise their concerns, because obviously there are concerns in the organization. I think it's very important that you conceptually integrate what you do. So this is not standalone. We have quarterly feedback sessions with our employees where the beliefs and behavior are always on the agenda. We have changed our best performer awards to these 4 B&B categories, beliefs and behavior categories. We are reflecting this in our recruitment processes and our talent management processes. So I think, this is a lot of daily work, and I would say very important is consistent work. And maybe, Daniel, if I may add one thing, I think one of our reflections was there is a very critical element in this change process. This is the role of the middle management, because the middle management was in our company very often recruited for strong functional capabilities and maybe not so much with a focus on the leadership capabilities. And what we have done after launching the B&Bs, we have been launching a program, a leadership development program for the director level, and also what we call mid-management curriculum for the manager level, in order to provide them tools to drive change, communicate change, implement change. I think this is really critical because the change starts on the top, but it happens in the entire organization.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, because I think that culture is something at the end that's, you can put it in words, but I think sometimes it's very intangible, no? And as well, I think that if you have a solid culture, you can very quickly see when you meet someone, okay, this person will fit into this organization or they won't fit into this organization. I mean, I don't know if you're at that stage already where you can quite quickly see if somebody is like an Essity culture fit or not.
And we get this quite often from the outside world. And I think the interesting is, as I said, we have these usually quarterly performance feedback sessions with all our employees. And I think the breakthrough was that we have really integrated the beliefs and behaviors in this performance feedback. So it's more than your functional performance. I mean, how you do things, the beliefs and behavior are deeply integrated. And we are talking to our employees when we believe they have demonstrated the right behavior, but also we talk to them when we believe they have not demonstrated the right behavior. And then we agree on actions and we follow up of them. But I think it's also clear, you mentioned it before, sometimes you have individual cases which do not fit into this culture and do not feel comfortable in this culture, and sometimes also in a separation.
Well, I think it's probably like better for everybody that a culture, I believe at least, Volker, maybe you don't, but I think that a good culture, that a culture that works is one that won't fit everybody. And it not to be like sectarian or anything, but simply some personalities will work better or worse in it, no?
Yeah, it's really when we are going for recruitments, for example, and we always say we hire for potential, then the B&B assessment is a super significant part of this assessment. So, of course, you have the functional capabilities, you have the leadership capabilities, but the B&B, so the fit to our company culture, is super important because I think you have to work, as I said, we are a very people-driven company, and you have to find your paths in this way. So you have to really breathe and live this company culture.
Yeah, actually, I mean, from a personality, or if you had to explain it to a friend, is there any way that now that you've gone through this transformation, you would define the Essity culture in?
I think, as I said, people-driven culture, where collaboration, we are most probably not the best organized when it comes to functional processes and so on. So we have a very big freedom box in the company, which I think some people coming from the outside sometimes struggle with. But collaboration, find your ways. I think we are super passionate. We have super engaged people. I mean, we are doing mood and mindset surveys, and we are looking for external benchmarks, and we are completely outperforming against external benchmarks when you see an engagement rate, for example. So we have a really passionate organization here, and I think this is a big asset for our company. And it describes our culture, the engagement, the passion of our people is extremely high.
Yeah, any other benefits apart from engagement that you've seen by having like a more clear company culture?
I think at the end of the day, clear company culture translates into performance because the culture is a strong orientation here. And another benefit I would say is also retention, because people working for our company. Of course, they feel really respected and they feel comfortable in this company, which sometimes is then also a challenge in itself, because when you need new capabilities in a business, and that is then sometimes a challenge to try further change here. But overall, I would say we see a good performance of the company based on this culture. Plus, I think we have very good retention rates for our talents.
Mm-hmm. And do you think there's any downside to having a strong company culture?
I don't think there is a downside, to be honest, but I think you also have to clear this is not a religion, it's an orientation to certain. And I think, I must say, we made really good experience with that. And the feedback of our people is also extremely positive. But I wouldn't say there is a real downside to that.
We're finishing finally a year that will be a year to remember. Obviously, Essity was like in top of everybody's mind when toilet paper started disappearing from supermarkets, Volker. Well, how do you think that your culture helped you go through this situation?
I think during this wave 1, February, March this year of COVID-19, we have really experienced this super strong culture of Essity in the entire organization, really starting from our manufacturing employees going every day in the factories, producing hygiene and medical products because the society needed them really desperately at this point of time. But also our office employees. We have been moving, you could say, overnight, 8,000 employees into a home office. And I think home office is not only working from home because suddenly, their families were at home and so on. So it was a much bigger change in their lives. And I think I could talk hours now about how many examples of really the 4 beliefs and behaviors: commitment, courage, care, commitment, collaboration we have seen there. The feedback of our business partners was really extremely positive. And that is something which makes me and the entire organization really super proud. And I think the most important thing is, it happened naturally. So, I mean, the people suddenly they adjusted very quickly to this, also for them, new and strange situation. And I think this is where a little bit was the proof point of our company culture and the high engagement of our employees.
Yeah. No, I imagine. I don't know if there's any specific example that comes to mind now of how this culture came through in this crisis.
I mean, there is a nice example, maybe, there was the point where the health system was running out of face masks. And a couple of creative heads in our company were rebuilding a machine which is usually producing baby diapers to produce face masks. And we provided them to the Swedish health system here to protect the people working in this area from infection. I mean, this is just one example where you see the commitment. And I think during these COVID times, we always said 3 things. We said, most important is to protect our people, and we have done a lot to protect our people. The second most important thing is business continuity, because everybody was looking not only for toilet paper. I think we all have seen these pictures of empty shelves in Europe, but also the medical products and the professional hygiene products which we are producing here. And the third one was then really contributing to the society, because there were a couple of people who were really severely impacted during this time. And I think this gave our organization also a certain orientation during these difficult times.
And how do you foresee 2021 for Essity?
I mean, we are of course optimistic. I mean, I'm managing the consumer business, and when people are spending more time at home, they're consuming more products at home. So from that perspective, I think we are confident. I mean, the most important thing is that the society stays healthy. I think this is we have seen, I think, as every company, of course, we were also impacted by COVID cases and then quarantines and stuff like that. So I think we all hope for a certain normalization. You can call it the new normal, but a kind of normalization where I think also the private lives are less impacted than they have been in 2020. I think this is what everybody deserves looking into 2021 on top of a hopefully well-developing business.
Yeah, well, I'm sure. Well, I don't know, but I was going to say, I'm sure that it's not going to be a year as crazy and unstable as 2020, even if the vaccine is still there's still some uncertainty around that. But I think it will still be a pretty exciting year, actually.
Yeah, it will be an exciting year. Some parts of the economy will also recover. I think, for example, we are pretty strong in the hotels, restaurants, and catering business with our professional hygiene proposition. And when you speak to some owners this time, there are a lot of question marks about their future. So I think the sooner we come back to a certain normality, I think our customers will appreciate that. But I think also from a private, we spoke so much about business disruption in the last years. I think our private lives have been disrupted so much during 2020. And hopefully we see a certain normalization and that we really can focus on the things we want to focus on.
Yeah. Well, look, I hope that the year goes well. And Volker, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks a lot for your time. And it was really interesting.
Thanks. Have a good time. Cheers.